Okay, so it says mineral deposits. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا ربيعة بن أبي عبد الرحمن وغيره, with a gap in the chain. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقطع لبلال بن الحارث المزني معادن من معادن القبلية وهو ما من ناحية الفرع. فتلك المعادن إلى اليوم لا يؤخذ منها إلا الزكاة. So Malik informed us that Rabi'a ibn Abd Rahman and others narrated to us that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam set apart for Bilal ibn Harith al-Muzani some of the mines of Al-Qabaliyah, which are in the direction of Fura'. And until this day, nothing is taken from those mines, of tax, except zakat. قال محمد الحديث المعروف أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في الركاز الخمس. قيل يا رسول الله وما الركاز؟ قال المال الذي خلقه الله تعالى في الأرض يوم خلق السماوات والأرض في هذه المعادن ففيها الخمس. وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله والعامة من فقهائنا. So here the issue is, what does rikaz mean? Right? Does rikaz mean buried treasure in which there is a fifth, or does rikaz mean mining? Right? So here, Imam Muhammad, the way he says it is that rikaz means mines. He says the recognized hadith, the well-known hadith, is that the Prophet ﷺ said from rikaz, which here he translates as mineral deposits, 1/5 is due. Right? So rikaz for Imam Shafi does not mean that. It means buried treasure. 1/5 is due on buried treasure. Whereas that's not the case for mines. He said that wealth, and when we say mines, meaning gold and silver mines, right? The wealth which Allah He exalted is He formed in the earth the day He formed the heavens and the earth. Um, so let's just go on a tangent right now. Let's imagine this hadith is sahih. Okay, would a geologist agree with that? That the gold deposits in the ground and silver deposits in the ground were there the day Allah created the world. Would they agree with it?
I think they would say it took time to perform.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly the details of like gold and silver, right? But from what I understand, the gold and silver, these are elements, right? These are elements, and so they are created in a very complex way. These elements are probably created in stars, right? Like I don't think on Earth you can't create new elements, from what I understand. But the point is, for a geologist, things are in stages. So number one, for a geologist or a scientist, quote unquote, it's more of a flow, right? Like the universe is like milk being spilt. It was in the cup, it fell over, went onto the desk, seeped into the pages, fell on the floor, and then changed color as it biodegraded, right? So there's a story. It's not just done, right? So we have to understand that generally speaking, that our scholars in their mind, generally speaking, is their world, the way they think is similar to the Bible, right? In that the earth has not been around that long and everything is just like created as it is, right? Now, in reality, there's nothing wrong with that. So if I came along and I said, what are you talking about? The earth is obviously not 5,000 years old, is it? You say, well, how do you know it isn't 5,000 years old? So, well, look at this and this and this. This takes this long time to happen, and that takes that long time to happen. So therefore, this. Let's look at, for example, zoology. Here's a leopard, here's a lion. The gap in evolution is at least 3 million years. So obviously, there's lions and leopards. They once were something before it, and it took at least 3 million years for that to evolve. So for us to have leopards and lions and they're different things, that's at least 3 million years. So what it is like this. Is like um, seeing something and seeing the normal process that would create it would dictate this much time. right? That's how they work, right? Given that there is, for example, there are the Himalayas, and given that the Himalayas were originally a part of Africa, then given that it takes such a long time for that to move from Africa all the way to the India subcontinent, well, to create, sorry, the India subcontinent itself, to move all the way across into the Eurasia, therefore this must be the case. But the fact that it looks like that, does it mean that it was actually created like that? Like the fact that the Americas could fit into Africa and Eurasia, and it would make sense that it was originally there. Does it actually have had to happen like that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I'll give you an example. Here is Muwatta books, right? In Singapore. Okay. If I rip this in half or I cut it in half and you saw two pieces of paper, is it necessarily the case that the two pieces of paper were together? Or does it just seem reasonable to assume that? Like if I cut this,
It's
uh,
reasonable to assume it.
yeah, but it's not necessarily the case, so is it?
Yes.
So for you to come along and assume an unreasonable assumption is ridiculous, right? But for you to label your reasonable assumption as science or fact, then that's not true. So what we should say is looking at geology, the Earth has probably been around for this much time, right? Like there's places you go in Scotland where you can look at Earth or parts of of Scotland that were formed about 1 billion years ago. It makes sense, therefore, that the Earth has been around for at least 1 billion years, right? But is it possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create a piece of paper like this that is cut in half, but they were never actually together? Is it possible, for example, for a bullet to hit something and to never have been shot out of a gun? Yes, right? The normal person who looks at a wall and sees a bullet hitting it and says, well, the bullet went in this far, presumably it was shot, and presumably it was shot at this speed, and presumably the person was standing at least in this area. That's the normal conclusion, but it's not necessarily the case. So there is no, when you say about science, science doesn't know that the Earth has been around for more than 5,000 years or more than anything. And for somebody to come along and say, oh yeah, Allah just created it like that. You know, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, you'd imagine that if this thing hits at this speed, it must have been dropped from 6 feet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could just create it like this and let it drop and hit at a speed that would imply that it was 6 feet high, but not there. So similarly, say the fact that we found dinosaur bones, therefore there must be dinosaurs. That's not necessarily the truth at all. Okay, well, why would Allah create it? I don't know. What I'm saying is you don't know that they actually existed. All you know is there are things that imply that they existed, right? There can be traces of something and the thing have never have existed ever. Well, that doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would you assume that? I'm not saying that it's true. What I'm saying is your assumptions are, at the end of the day, are just reasonable assumptions. They are not actual fact. Does that make sense? So when somebody comes along and says, I actually think the Earth has only been around for, and one of my friends, he said this, he's kind of a scholar. He said, yeah, I don't think the Earth has been around for that long. It's been around for about 3,500 years or 5,000 years. I thought it was a bit ridiculous, but it is not part of theology to believe that the Earth has been around for 5,000 years or 5 billion years or 5 gazillion years. And it is wrong to say no, but science shows otherwise. Science suggests that's all it does. Science doesn't know, it suggests, right? Science suggests this, right? But it doesn't, there are some very small things that it actually knows. And does that make sense? So we have to be a little bit careful when we deal with these things. The verse of the Quran or Hadith will never contravene categorical known science. But categorical known science is not that much. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's good.
Right?
Uh, sorry, what do you mean by, I mean, I'm not sure what it means, categorical science.
Categorical science, like, so this is definitely the case. A lot of things in science are not definitely the case. So, for example, my brother, is a mathematician, and he worked on, he works with science as well. Like, math is categorical, right? 2 plus 2 does equal 4. Okay, but that doesn't actually exist. There's no such thing as two in reality. We have to label things as units. So, when you're dealing with math, that's categorical. When you're dealing with physics, most of the time it's categorical, right? When you're dealing with chemistry or biology or geology or astrology, a lot of it is just ijtihad, is an assumption, like lots of assumptions, right? So I just as an example, my brother's, PhD. Am I recording this? His PhD, for example, was on was on evolution, okay? He was with a team of people looking at evolution. And his thing as a mathematician was to look at the role of symmetry in evolution. Okay. So previously, previously the assumption was that life comes out of nowhere, we don't know where it comes from, and then evolution happens. So life just happens and evolution happens. And evolution happens based on survival of the fittest, right? Meaning there are random mutations, and whichever of those random mutations is the most useful, that is the thing that will happen. Their research proved that symmetry, the mathematics of symmetry, had quite a significant role in evolution. Meaning, that randomness doesn't just happen based randomly, and is not just natural selection, but rather symmetry has a significant, if not more, significant role in choosing what will happen than natural selection and what we call selective advantage. So here we know that evolution happened like this, and we know that's the case. And look, the giraffes with the longer necks survived, and that's why you have long necked giraffes. But we don't actually know that. And another thing comes along and says, actually, that's not the case, right? Scientists knew that the universe had already existed, and then they realized that it didn't, right? It was a scientific fact that the universe has always been around, and some weird people called theists, they say otherwise, right? And then they came to know that the universe came into existence, but now we just don't understand how. Can you see that, right? So, for example, the Big Bang. The Big Bang is very significant because it's actually a joke. So somebody came along with the idea of the Big Bang, and then somebody mocked it by saying, "Ha ha, what are you talking about? You're trying to say there was suddenly some kind of Big Bang? Ha ha." So the word that we use today in a normal scientific way, they used it as a joke because it was once a joke in the scientific community, right? So what I'm trying to say is categorical scientific fact, like this is the case, is often not the case at all. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's that.
But if it is a scientific fact, Quran and the Hadith, they don't go against it. And if we see a Hadith that categorically goes against a historical fact, right, then it's wrong. I'm not saying the Prophet ﷺ is wrong, but we're saying that he didn't say that, did he? So again, I don't understand, the whole geology of gold and silver specifically. Um, what was the, but would it, however, from a geological, astrological way, how it all comes about, I don't know. But the point is, it's important that that's just thing to understand that. So assuming the hadith is there, when did that actually happen? How long ago did Allah create the universe? I don't know. It doesn't have to be billions of years ago. That's what I'm trying to say. So that whole process can happen very, very quickly in a split second. Why not? So in a split second, dinosaurs can walk on the earth and all be extinct in a split second. So all the traces that would need to be there over millions of years doesn't actually have to take a million years. You just fast forward it. A. And B, it doesn't have to have happened anyway, right? There doesn't have to have been what's it called? Pangea, for example, when all the continents were connected. That doesn't actually have to have happened at all, right? Just because it would be logically, it would make sense. That doesn't actually have to be the case at all. We just have to be clear with what we know and what we think. We have to be epistemologically modest, right? No, say when I know something, I know it. If I don't know it, I don't know it. And if I think something the case, I say I think as opposed to I know. Right? And most of science is not I know, but is I think. Just like most of fiqh is I think, right? I know that going to the bathroom breaks your wudu. But what about going to the bathroom with something irregular? For example, that's like a worm coming out of your private parts. I don't know. It's debated. I know that sleeping breaks your wudu, but it's debated. Otherwise, what else breaks your wudu? I don't know. It's all debated. Touching private parts, debated. Touching opposite sex, debated. Laughing in prayer, debated. Whatever else, eating camel meat, debated. So we're clear. Like I know this, I don't know this. But when somebody runs around saying I know everything, then they're an extremist. And so a scientist who goes around saying I know everything, you're an extremist. It's not academic. It's immature. Okay, so that's that issue there. Okay, باب صدقة البقر, i.e. zakat on cows. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا محمد بن حميد بن قيس عن طاووس. Right, um, this is طاووس, who is one second, is um, Meccan, I believe. Let me just double check right at the end of the book. طاووس is one of the Meccans. طاووس طاووس ibn Kaysan al-Yamani. Some say his name is Dhakwan, others say Tawus. Peacock was his honorific topic. That's not his name. He was a follower of the Tabi'een, and he was trustworthy narrated. He died in 106, but some say other than that, doesn't say where he's from, but I'm pretty sure he's Medini. He's not Medini, he's Meccan. Give me a second. I also believe he is Mecci. Yep, the students of Ibn Abbas. So he's Yemeni. Oh, he narrates from Zayd ibn Thabit. So that's Madini, Aisha, Abu Huraira, Zayd ibn Arqam, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Ibn Amr, Jabir, um, ابن عباس كان يدني طاووس منه حتى عد طاووس من خواص أصحاب ابن عباس. Yep. So Madani. Yeah, these are all these he's they're all he's Madani. Yeah, and so Amr ibn Dinar Madani. Sorry, Mekki, sorry, Mekki. He says ما رأيت أحدا أشد تنزها مما في أيدي الناس من طاووس. I've never seen anybody who's most least had less concern for people. Um, 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 people's money. He didn't care about rulers either. وتجنبوا السلطان أبو ذر طاووس and Sufyan. Um, yeah, he's buried. He passed away in Muzdalifah. Okay. Okay. Says طاووس أن so this is مرسلا right أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بعث معاذ بن جبل إلى اليمن فأمره أن يأخذ من كل 30 بقرة تبيعا ومن كل 40 مسنة فأتي بها دون ذلك فأبى أن يأخذ منه شيئا وقال لم أسمع فيه من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم شيئا حتى أرجع إليه فتوفي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل أن يقدم معاذ. Malik informed us that Humayd ibn Qais informed us from Taus that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal to Yemen, ordering them to take a yearling from every 30 cows and a 2-year-old from every 40. So someone came to him with less than that, and he refused to take anything from him, saying, "I did not hear the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning that. I will not take anything from it until I return to him." And then the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died before Mu'adh arrived. قال وحول هذا نأخذ ليس في أقل من 30 من البقر زكاة فإذا كانت 30 ففيها التبيع وتبيعة والتبيع الجذع الحولي إلى 40 فإذا بلغت 40 ففيها مسنة وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله والعامة. He says we adhere to this. There is no zakat on less than 30 cows. If they are 30, a yearling, male, female, is due, and a yearling is one which has completed a year and begun its second year. He says, likewise, until they are 40, they reach 40. When they are 40, a 2-year old is due. That is a verdict of Imam Hanifa and the majority of scholars, right? So there is no such thing as less than 30, and there is no, it's discrete and not continuous, right? So 30 and 31 is the same. 30 and 32 is the same. Up to 39, and then 40 is a different one. You don't take like one half of a cow or something like that. It doesn't exist. But with money you do. Treasure trove, al-Kenz. So treasure troves are rikaz for the Shafis. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع قال سئل ابن عمر عن الكنز فقال هو المال الذي لا تؤدى زكاته. Oh, there's something, another discussion totally. So Malik informed us from Nafi' from Ibn Umar who was asked about a treasure trove. What does that mean? So that means, or al-Kenz, you could say, not treasure trove. Asked about storing, right? ما كنزتم لأنفسكم, right? What's the verse? ما كنزتم لأنفسكم. Second. Malik Anas. Here we go. Right, that's tafsir. Yeah. يوم يحمى عليها في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم هذا ما كنزتم. So he was asked about hoarding, right? Not treasure trove. Hoarding. This is the, he said, what is hoarding? He says that is the wealth. That is the wealth that zakat is not due, not is not handed over, right? أخبرنا مالك حدثنا عبد الله بن دينار. Um, Abu Salih, that Abu Hurairah said, whoever has wealth and does not hand over his wealth, then there resurrecting it will be made into a hideous serpent with two carbuncles, I don't know what that is, which chases him until he corners him and says, I am your treasure, I am your treasure. May Allah protect us. باب ما نحل له الزكاة أو تحل عفوا من تحل له زكاة. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار مرسلا gap أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تحل الصدقة لغني إلا لخمسة لغاز في سبيل الله وعامل عليها أو غارم أو لغارم أو لرجل اشتراها بماله أو لرجل له جاء مسكين تصدق على المسكين فأهدى إلى الغني. Excuse me. So Malik informed us that Zayd ibn Aslam narrated from Ata ibn Yasar that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there's a gap in the chain, that sadaqah is not allowed for someone not in need, except in five cases. Someone going forth fighting in the way of Allah. This person, he's not, there's no, the army is not there, so the government is not paying for it. It's his own horse that he's going with, his own armor and everything. And so this person can be given zakat for that. Someone put in charge of collecting and distributing it. So that's my salary, right? So if there's no salary, then the salary is given to him. He's given from zakat. His salary can be paid from zakat. And for which reason in the Shafi school, we could also give it to a non-Muslim. So imagine if there's a non-Muslim helping to gather zakat, you can pay his wages with zakat, with zakat money. So it's like the only scenario in the Shafi school where a non-Muslim can receive zakat. Or somebody in debt, right? So I guess they're not ghani then, are they? But they can be ghani in certain scenarios. They're not wealthy, but a debtor, right? A man who buys with his own money, who buys it with his own money. So he bought that thing. So there was a cow given to somebody as zakat, and then you bought it. You say, "Oh, I have zakat. That's haram." It's not. The cow was zakat to him, but it's you just bought it from him. Or a man who is poor, has a poor neighbor, it being given to the poor person, who gives it to the person who is not in need. So some grain was given to this poor person, and the poor person fed it to you. For him, it is sadaqah. For you, it is something else. قال محمد بهذا نأخذ الغازي في سبيل الله إذا كان له عنها غنى يقدر بغناه على الغزو لم يستحب له أن يأخذ منها شيئا وكذلك الغارم إن كان عنده وفاء بدينه وفضل تجب فيه الزكاة لم يستحب له أن يأخذ منها شيء. وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. So these scenarios is not, it's not a, if you it's hard to read it. It says we adhere to this. As for someone who goes forth to fight in the way of Allah, if he can do without it, being able to go forth and fight in by his own means, then it's not encouraged for him to take anything. Likewise, the debtor, if it has the means to fulfill his debt and an amount remaining upon which zakat is due, it is not encouraged for him to take anything. And that is the verdict of Imam Hanifa rahimahullah, but that otherwise is valid. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا نافع أن ابن عمر كان يبعث بزكاة الفطر إلى الذي تجمع عنده قبل الفطر بيومين أو ثلاثة. So Malik informed us that Nafi narrated that Ibn Umar used to send zakat al-fitr to one with whom it was amassed 2 or 3 days before. So I believe this is the position of the Malikis and the Hanbalis, I believe, Allahu Alam. But they stick to the nas that you can't send it before that. In the Shafi school, we can do that. We can do it up to the beginning of zakat al-fitr can be beginning of Ramadan. right? So you can give that all the way from the beginning of Ramadan. So the first day of Ramadan, as soon as Maghrib comes in Ramadan, you can give your zakat al-fitr and that's it. قال محمد رحمه الله وبهذا نأخذ يعجبنا تعجيل زكاة الفطر قبل أن يخرج الرجل إلى المصلى وهو قول أبي حنيفة, right? It's good to do it before he goes out, right? But again, they're more strict than the Shafis, I believe. I'm not sure exactly how early you can do it for the Hanafis, but they're more strict. The Shafis say you can do it from the beginning of Ramadan, that's it. Zakat due on olives. Malik informed us that Ibn Shihab said the zakat on olives is a tenth. قال محمد بهذا نأخذ إذا خرج منه 5 أوسق فصاعدا ولا يلتفت في هذا إلى الزيت إنما ينظر في هذا إلى الزيتون وأما في قول أبي حنيفة ففي قليله وكثيره. Muhammad says we adhere to this if 5 wasaqs or more are yielded, then the zakat is due, and there is no consideration of the oil. As for the opinion of Abu Hanifa, may Allah, he said the tenth is due on olives, regardless of how little it is. Right? So the Shafis, we say there's no zakat on olives. And I believe it's the same for the Malikis, Wallahu a'lam. Let's see if it mentions it here. Yeah, he does mention the Maliki school here, but he mentions, he says, قال جماعة الفقهاء وأبو حنيفة والشافعي في أحد قوله والثاني كابن وهب وأبي ثور وأبي يوسف ومحمد لا زكاة فيه لأنه إدام. And that's about zaytun. Sorry, that's about zaytun. So from what I recall from the Maliki school is there's no zakat in anything, any any there's zakat in these things. Allahu A'lam. We can check. In the Shafi school, there's no zakat on olives. So for us, it's only qut, right? Um, the qut itself, meaning staple food. Olives are not staple food, and dates and grapes specifically. Okay, أبواب الصيام says chapter. باب الصوم لرؤية الهلال والإفطار لرؤيته. Fast being due on sighting the new moon and broke on sighting it. أخبرنا مالك أخبر نافع وعبد الله بن دينار. So this is a super صحيح chain there. عن ابن عمر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذكر رمضان فقال. This first with tafsil, meaning and then said, not insane, right? He mentioned Ramadan. He didn't talk about Ramadan and then say. He said he talked about Ramadan saying the following words, right? The fa means what came before it was general, and what comes after it is more specific. لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن غم عليكم فاقدروا له. Right, so Malik informed us from Nafi' and Abdullah ibn Dinar that he narrated from Abdullah ibn Umar that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ spoke about Ramadan, full stop. And notice it doesn't translate it, and then he said, don't fast until you see the new moon, nor break the fast until you see it. If it is overcast, then estimate it, i.e., as 30 days. I mean, that's the he has debated again what does it mean faqburula. There's difference of agreement. And again, what does it mean to estimate it? But here, based on various different things, it means assume it to be 30 days. قال محمد بهذا نأخذ وهو قول أبي حنيفة رحمه الله. Okay. So the discussion here then is what if it's seen in one place, not another place? So the Shafi'is, they hold that it is every single locality has its own sighting. So what is seen in the East Coast, not the same as West Coast. What's seen in Singapore is not the same as in Bangladesh, etc. Or uh, the Middle East or something. The position of the Hanafis is that, and the Malik and the Hanbalis is that the whole world is one thing. So if it's seen in the East, then it's seen in the West. And they all agree that on seeing, meaning for the court to establish Ramadan as a legal issue, you have to see, right? So they all agree that. So the court cannot confirm a calculation. But if you are not the court, or an individual in a Muslim country or outside, and you calculated that it is Ramadan, then according to Shihab al-Din and Shams al-Din you're obliged to fast. Right? You have to do that. You've worked out that you have to fast. And similarly, if you believe somebody else that you believe somebody else did a calculation, NASA does a calculation that the moon has been born, it's after sunset, etc., then you have to fast. So they agree that there cannot be a court ruling, but they disagree when it comes to the individual. So it may be that the Qadi himself, he's going to fast tomorrow, but he can't rule that it's Ramadan tomorrow. Because one is on an individual level, one is on a state level. It's not the same. So when you hear people saying, but the scholars agree that you have to see it, it's true. For the court process, it's not that they don't agree when it comes to the individual level. باب متى يحرم الطعام على الصائم, when food becomes forbidden for someone to fast. أخبرنا مالك أخبرنا مالك حدثنا عبد الله بن دينار عن ابن عمر قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن بلالا ينادي بليل فكلوا واشربوا حتى ينادي ابن أم مكتوم. Right? So he says, the Prophet ﷺ said, Bilal calls the adhan while it is still night. Right? Still, so eat and drink until Ibn Maktoum calls the adhan. Right? Until it's actually Fajr. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا الزهري عن سالم مثله وقال وكان ابن مكتوم لا ينادي حتى يقال له قد أصبحت, you have entered the morning. It's now Fajr time. قال محمد كان بلال ينادي بليل في شهر رمضان لسحور الناس وكان ابن أم مكتوم ينادي للصلاة بعد طلوع الفجر فلذلك قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلوا واشربوا إلى آخره. Right, so Imam Muhammad says what Sayyidina Bilal used to do was specific to Ramadan. It wasn't a general thing. There was no adhan before Fajr normally. It was just specific to Ramadan. The Shafis used to say there's always an adhan before Fajr. There's two adhans for Fajr for the Shafis. An adhan for Tahajjud and an adhan for Ramadan itself. Okay, باب من أفطر متعمدا في رمضان. Someone who intentionally breaks the fast in Ramadan. أخبرنا مالك حدثنا زهري عن حميد بن عبد الرحمن عن أبي هريرة أن رجلا أفطر في رمضان فأمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يكفر بإتق رقبة أو صيام شهرين متتابعين أو إطعام 60 مسكينا. قال لا أجد، فأتي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق من تمر فقال خذ هذا فتصدق به. فقال يا رسول الله ما أجد أحدا أحوج إليه مني. قال كله. Okay, so Imam Malik informs that Zuhri said that Humayd ibn Abdul Rahman said that Abu Hurairah said, a man broke the fast in Ramadan. How did he break his fast? So did he break his fast intentionally or unintentionally? And then what did he break his fast on? Like what was the thing that he did that broke his fast? So the answer is I don't know. So is it valid to take something that is vague, that is mujmal, it's vague, and apply it in its absolute sense, right? So if I told you, for example, give me a book now, and you gave me any book, that's fine. So it's not mujmal, it's mutlaq. Mutlaq is, it's just unqualified. I didn't say what kind of book. If I say jump up, I say, well, how high? So I didn't mention how high, so however you jump up is fine. You have done what I asked you to do. But when you say this thing happened, a man entered a city. Or what kind of man? What kind of city? Where? So you're talking about something specific in the past. That's not mutlaq. That's mujmal, meaning I don't know what that is. So here, it's not very easy to apply this hadith. Okay? This hadith is mujmal. We don't actually know. And then the hadith continues. So the Messenger of Allah has told him to atone for it by freeing a slave or fasting 2 consecutive months or by feeding 60 of the poor. So he had a choice. The man said, I cannot. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, was brought an araq, 30 sa' of dates. So he said, take this and give it away. The Prophet ﷺ, and the man said, oh, Ya Rasulullah, I cannot find anyone in greater need than me. So the Prophet ﷺ said, you take it yourself. قال محمد بهذا نأخذ إذا أفطر الرجل متعمدا في شهر رمضان بأكل أو شرب أو جماع. Right? Notice how he explains it. فعليه قضاء يوم مكانه وكفارة الظهار أن يعتق رقبة فإن لم يجد فصيام شهرين متتابعين فإن لم يستطع أطعم 60 مسكينا لكل مسكين نصف صاع من حنطة أو صاع من تمر أو شعير. So Muhammad says we adhere to this. If a man breaks the fast on purpose in the month of Ramadan by eating or drinking or having sexual intercourse, he must replace it with another day and make expiation of dhihar, divorce, by making expiation for it by freeing a slave. And if he cannot, um, then by fasting 2 consecutive months. And if he cannot, then he must fast 60 of the poor, each one of them half a sa' of corn or dates or barley. Hinta is not corn, is wheat. Hinta, wheat. They didn't have corn, right? Corn is from the Americas. So notice how he organized it. Here it does not mention the tartib, the heat font. He's getting that for something else. And here he assumed that it's mutlaq when it's mujmal. They're assuming that it's, excuse me, we don't know how he broke his fast. And perhaps the specific way that he broke his fast has a khasiyah, has something specific about it. So there's another version of this hadith, which Imam Malik quotes, where it mentions that a man came and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I destroyed myself. He said, what happened? He says, I slept with my wife. Aha. So the Shafis, they say, aha, we didn't know what the story was. We found out specific information, and that specific information is relevant. So for the Shafis, we say, this is mujmal. We don't know what it is. And then we find another hadith which explains it, right? Just, and now we come along and we're like, aha, he slept with his wife in Ramadan. He had intercourse. And the Shafis say, aha, is intercourse something that is given and treated in the Sharia as a specific thing? So yes. So now can we do analogy from intercourse to anything else? The answer is no. Okay. But the Shafis and Malikis, they say that is not significant, right? Finding out that it was specifically intercourse is not relevant. That's like irrelevant as finding out his name was Ahmed. Right? It doesn't matter what his name is. It doesn't matter. The point is he broke his fast. Shafi say this hadith here doesn't tell us how he broke his fast. The other one tells us specifically how he broke his fast, and that is relevant. And the Malikis and the Hanafis like, it's not relevant, right? It's like the Prophet ﷺ said, if a dog licks me, but what kind of dog? Big or small? So that's not relevant, as long as it's a dog. Okay, there's no difference. It's just a dog. Okay. Does that make sense? So every faqih, in fact, every narrator, and that's even more important, every faqih and every narrator is picking and choosing what is relevant. Every narrator and every faqih is picking and choosing what they feel is relevant. They ignore certain details that they don't think is relevant. That's not doesn't change anything, right? وَرَبَائِكُمُ اللَّاتِي في حجوركم, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and your daughter, your stepdaughters who live in your houses. Is it significant that they live in their house, right? Or is it significant that you have consummated the marriage with their mothers, right? So the verse mentions the verse mentions what? The raba'ib, the stepdaughters, and then it mentions that you have whose mothers you have consummated the marriage with, okay? And it mentions that they live with you. So is it significant that the girl lives with you or not? It's not significant. Is it significant that you've consummated the marriage with her mother? Yes, significant. So they look at the verse of the Quran, what's significant and what's just kharaja makharaj al-ghalib. Yeah, that's just a normal situation. Or that's just the circumstances. I happen to be this. So here the Shafis, the Malikis and Hanafis, they look at the other hadith, see that's just a circumstance. Like obviously you have to break your fast in one way or the other, right? And so how exactly he broke his fast is irrelevant. The point is he broke his fast. The Shafis say no. Lil jima'in khasiyya, right? Intercourse has a specific significance in the Sharia. It is significant. It's not just like anything else, right? So the first thing is we look at something that's mujmal. We have to find a mubayyin, something to explain it, and then we're going to do analogy from that. Okay? And that's what they're doing. So for the Shafis, the kafara is only for intercourse, and it's also only for a man. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop here. It says, باب الرجل يطلع له الفجر في رمضان وهو جنوب. Inshallah, we'll come back to this, inshallah, next week. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان الله وبحمده أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب